Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Tony Yoka, Martin Bakole, 14 May. This is a very good fight. So this is a preview and prediction video. I'm a little bit late in the piece. I'm still traveling, so the audio quality of the video is a bit down. I forgot my microphone cable, so I've been without it already for 10 days. So apologies for that, but we'll launch into it. I'll start with Martin Bakole first, because there are questions not only about Yoka, but Bakole too. Remembering years ago when he was on the way up, you're hearing all these stories about how well he was doing in gyms, beating guys up. He was giving Joshua work as well, thought very highly of. He seemed to be on this trajectory where he was on the way up and nothing could stop him. Then he has a fight with Michael Hunter. And heading into that fight, because Hunter had been down at cruiserweight, I think in general, he was a little lightly regarded in terms of his prospects at heavyweight. But with his in and out style, and he was taking a lot of risks in that fight, he managed to, pick Martin Bakole apart with his punches. And ultimately, he was able to start grinding him down. And that could be something that we need to watch for in this fight, but I'll come to that with the Yoka side of the equation. But ultimately, Bakole lost that fight. He was injured later in the fight as well. And it looked like he didn't want to come out of his corner after, round 9. But ultimately, Billy Nelson, his trainer, gave him the hard word. He was sent out, and ultimately he got stopped. And since then, he's been working his way back. And remember, that fight was in 2018. So he hasn't had the cleanest and the easiest road back. There was a time where he was very highly regarded as a prospect coming through. But since then, he's feasted on a lot of journeymen. He's, and tough, durable journeymen too. Guys that haven't really been sort of stopped too much. He managed to stop Marius Vak. He also had fights against other tough, durable journeymen who really had gone rounds with other guys. I think the win that really sort of is the best of the bunch since his loss to Michael Hunter was against Sergey Kuzmin. Kuzmin, who is tough and durable, very sort of tough fight with Martin Bakole, where it was sort of two different contrasting, fights. One was the fight on the inside, was very close. As soon as Martin Bakole gave up the distance, Kuzmin was in the fight. But when he was at range, throwing his jab, keeping it long, using those straight punches, he was very in control. And that's obviously what won him the fight in the end, because he was able to box at distance, for large parts of that fight. And he's got good power, good straight punches. And this is something we're going to need to see against Tony Yoka, because this is not, I don't believe, going to be a fight that's fought on the inside, because both these guys don't really fight that way. I think this is going to be a bit of a long-range sort of, or mid-range to long-range sort of contest where straight punches are going to be key. But for Yoka, a couple of other things I think you want to mix in. But Yoka is going to be tested, I'm sure, in terms of Bakole straight punches, and we might see that chin tested. Martin Bakole's really got to try to land a couple, get some good work away, because if he can't, and especially early in those first sort of 5 to 6 rounds, his conditioning could play a factor in the part later in the fight. And Bakole coming into this fight, in his training camp, the stuff that's come out, I have sort of thought to myself, does he look like he's as trim and ready as he could be? And Bakole's never been a guy that's been super ripped and, the body beautiful sort of. He's not been a sort of statuesque Anthony Joshua sort of clone or anything like that. But I did wonder, is he carrying a little bit of rubble for a fight that probably is going to go some rounds? And if it goes some rounds and Bakole starts to gas a little bit, that's, I think, advantage Tony Yoka. But I definitely think the jab is going to be a key weapon for Martin Bakole, because while the height, there's a couple of inches difference, the reach is basically the same. And I think he's going to need to use that jab, use that straight right hand. And I think maybe similar to Peter Milas, who was able to work Tony Yoka's body to some success. And I think Bakole is going to need to try to look for something similar, because I do think that Tony Yoka, and we'll switch a little bit here onto him, is going to be looking to work the body. I think that he'll see that if he can stay out of danger, especially early on, and maybe there's going to be quite a few even rounds early on, I think that Yoka will start to target that body. I think there'll be some jabs and some right hands shot down to the body, because I think he'll want to test the gas tank of Martin Bakole. I think this is going to be a case that work rate could be key for Yoka, because Martin Bakole will want it more lower volume. And I'm not saying that Bakole is massively out of shape or anything, but I do think that Tony Yoka, who we know comes in shape, we know can go rounds. We've seen him in some fights that have gone deeper. That one against Milas being an example. He went 12 against Christian Hammer. He can do the rounds. We know that, and he's been pushed and tested by some good opposition in recent years. And I do think that because he's been fighting in France, people have been underrating the sort of guys and the performances that he's been putting in, because he's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. But this fight, especially for Yoka, could be one of those breakthrough moments. We know Bakole has got talent. We know that he is a guy who's a big puncher, who's got aspirations of his own. So it's not going to be some guy who's got no talent that Yoka is facing. And if he can get a win of Bakole, it takes him to that next level. And the reverse is true as well. So too for Martin Bakole. If he can beat Tony Yoka, if he can crack that chin, take him out, that's a huge win for his career and propels him into the minds of fans and potentially into a much bigger fight next time out. Tony Yoka, he already has the link up with ESPN and Top Rank. So if he's able to beat Bakole, he can parlay that into something much, much bigger. And there could be some other fights out there for him, potentially in the United States. And we know that a little while ago there was going to be a fight with Carlos Takam, but that was sort of scrapped because of injury. Perhaps that could be resurrected or something. I know some people thought that would never happen because of their friendship, but at the end of the day, it's business, and if the money's right, I'm sure they could sort of force to come into the ring for a payday against Tony Yoka, which I could see being something like a fight that they could have as his American debut or something like that. And Yoka himself obviously goes to the United States. He's been training in Vegas. He's had some good rounds, good hard rounds in Vegas. Also, Martin Bakole. He's had a pretty decent preparation as well. He was in Tyson Fury's training camp for a number of weeks. All those guys he was sparring with, David Adelaide, Joseph Parker, there were others. So it is a case that I think both these guys are well prepared. There should be no excuses. But I do edge this one to Tony Yoka, and I think that this is going to be fought from the mid-range to the outside. I think it's going to be a tactical battle. I think Tony Yoka is going to be the one trying to dictate the pace. I think he's going to be trying to dictate the tactics. I think he will be trying to work to Bakole's body to try to slow him down. I think it's going to be very cagey early on. He will want to be very careful of those power punches of Bakole. The jab, I don't think he's going to want to be eating too many of those, and especially staying away from Bakole's right hand. So I think it's got the hallmarks to be a very intriguing fight. Maybe not a barn burner, because I don't think that Tony Yoka is going to want to get into a firefight against a guy who's got very heavy hands. And Bakole as well has got power in both hands. We can't forget that. Does have a decent hook. He can dig to the body well. I do think sometimes when we've seen Tony Yoka in firefights, he can get a little bit, and when I say that, I say there can be spurts in fights where he can be drawn into a little bit of a war. I think it's probably best for him against this opponent, Bakole, to try to stay away from that. I mean, I could totally see this going to a decision if he is safety first, but I do think that Tony Yoka wants to make a statement. I could very well see a very even sort of first 4, 5, 6 rounds. But the weight of the work that Yoka does, and I do think he'll be working to the body. I think he'll be trying to make Bakole move. He'll be using that ring. I think he will be looking to tire him out. He does have a little bit of an advantage on the height side, but the reach is basically even. So I do think tactics are going to be key here. It's not just going to be some shootout, I don't believe. But this is one of the best fights of the year so far in the heavyweight division. And I think it's been going way under the radar. There haven't been the sort of people that are talking about it that as much as I think people should be. This is going to be on ESPN Plus, so there is going to be some broadcast coverage around the place to find. So it's not going to be some, dodgy little stream that you have to hunt for from France, all that sort of stuff. There is going to be some coverage that should be readily available. I like the fight. I do favour Tony Yoka to win, and it could be one of these things where there's a late stoppage, but Bakole is very dangerous. It's going to be a long way back for Bakole if he loses. Already had that first loss against Michael Hunter, and at the moment, as I understand it, without a promoter. So, it's going to be interesting if he loses. So I think the motivation is going to be there because this is the biggest test and opportunity of his career. So he'll be up for this. He really will. And Yoka knows as well that for him, if he loses, for a guy that's been basically fighting in France, out of sight, out of mind, it's probably a couple of years of a rebuild job too. And he's approaching 30 at the moment. A lot of these guys from Rio who fought there are 30 or older, or close to 30 and older at this point. So he needs to win here, win well, make a statement. Both these guys do. They need it. They really both need it. So they're not going to be wanting for motivation. I like the fight. I'm picking Yoka to win. I do think Bakole, he certainly can win this. He can hurt Yoka, but I just think that Tony Yoka is going to have too much. Picking him to win. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.